Hi, I'm Ken Fong. I'm the senior pastor of the Evergreen Baptist Church of Los Angeles in Rosemead, California. I've been serving on staff since 1978, which means I've been there a very long time, and I've preached a lot of sermons. Now, I wasn't the weekly preacher until about 12 years ago, and I still have other preachers on my staff, but I've pretty much been the main preacher. When I used to teach the preaching practicum in seminary, one of the axioms that I always taught my students, I believe still holds true today. And it's based on that old saying, familiarity breeds contempt. I think what makes preaching difficult, especially today, especially when you're preaching to people who are quite familiar with the general message of the Bible, the general themes that are found in the books, is basically there's enough familiarity there for them to have contempt. And the task of every preacher is to overcome the contempt that is there waiting for you every Sunday or wherever it is or whenever it is that you happen to preach. But I don't want to give you the wrong idea, because yes, there is contempt in the listening audience, but I believe there's a greater amount of contempt in the heart and in the mind of those of us who are the preachers. And what do I mean by that? It's one thing to sit there and to hear what you expect to hear. It's another thing altogether to open up the text, a text that you have studied many, many, many times over the years, a text that you've preached inside and out and backwards, and not to automatically hear the tapes going off in your head about, I know what this means, I know what I'm supposed to say. And we're so familiar with the passage, we're so familiar with the concepts, that it's so easy to just really go through the motions. So I would say the person who has the greatest contempt for the passage every week is the preacher, him or herself. And so your greatest task and my greatest task as that week starts afresh is to admit, to confess that we do have contempt for the passage, and then to find ways to get beyond that contempt, to let the word surprise us, to let it kind of come at us from a different direction and startle us so that we're like seeing it for the very first time. How do you do that? Well, I think it works different ways for different people. For me, certainly it helps by reading unfamiliar translations of a familiar passage. It helps knowing that there are certain authors like Frederick Buechner, for instance, or Dallas Willard, people who have thought deeply about these passages and think very differently than I do. And I may not use anything that they end up saying, but they many times startle me, especially Buechner. Frederick Buechner is just one of the most brilliant people, and I don't know if you've ever read anything by Buechner, but he has two little books that I find very helpful. One is Peculiar Treasures, and it's a biblical who's who. You'll never recognize these characters when you first read them, but they're all these familiar characters in the Bible, and it's just helpful to get kind of this backstory, if you will, before you really come into what the message is all about. Another good book is called Wishful Thinking, which is a theological ABC, and very short little pithy definitions that completely catch you by surprise. So anyway, it could be through reading, it could be through listening to other preachers, people like Rob Bell helps me sometimes, but sometimes it's also just getting away from the text for a while. One of my regular rhythms is I go riding 1 or 2 times a week on my bicycle, about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and away from the computer, away from the internet, and away from my cell phone. And I've already started thinking about the passage, and I'm just frequently surprised how things come to me in startling, unexpected ways, some insights, little angles, and I don't always end up using them, but it gets me excited again. It gets me on the edge of my seat. And if that doesn't happen to us in our study, you can imagine how everyone on Sunday morning, whenever it is that you preach, they're just kind of sitting on the back of their seats. And they're not sitting on the edge of their seats because we're not on our toes. So I would highly recommend that you acknowledge that you and I, if you're a regular preacher, many times we just have so much contempt that we need to get past. Let me tell you something. I've preached probably 25 Easter Sunday sermons or 25 Christmas Sunday sermons. And if you've ever had to do something like that, you know that it's so natural to have contempt for that assignment. And that's bizarre, right? I mean, it's Easter, it's Christmas Sunday. But the people, they too just kind of, especially those people who only come those 2 times a year, they just think they're going to hear what they always expect to hear. And it's tough. And it's a challenge to actually say something in an unexpected way. I remember one Christmas Sunday, my opening line was, "Merry Mr. Period." And it was just like all of a sudden everyone was paying attention. And I know that I was really paying attention before that because I wasn't used to talking like that. And that brings up another thing. I think sometimes we lapse into predictable patterns of how we preach. And people just, once they hear the pattern kick in, they go on autopilot. It's too familiar. And that contempt comes up again. You need to vary your approach. You need to even surprise yourself. Don't always start in the same way. Don't always finish in the same way. I use metaphors. I use imagery. I know some of you use PowerPoint. I use it all the time, but I don't use it like a lecture because I see it as a conversation. Preaching is a two-way conversation. It's just I have to anticipate what their part is. And by throwing up the images and not just putting up bullet points, but key phrases along with provocative images that really drive home that point, I just find those kind of things really help people stay with what is essential. Speaking of essential, I would say finally that don't worry about having a 3-point sermon. I trashed that a long time ago. Have one essential point. Now, Scripture is deep and it's rich. Any particular passage has more than one essential point a lot of times. You don't have to give all the points, but make sure that you do zero in on what is the essential point for this audience at this particular time. Something that really stands out to you. And again, if something speaks to you, if something startles you, if something's got you now excited, no matter how long you've been a Christian, no matter how many times you might have used this passage, if it's something that really catches you again and breathes new life into some aspect of your understanding of God, then there's a greater likelihood that you'll be able to communicate it with that same kind of zeal and passion. Well, there's one other resource that I would commend to you, and it's a book called Made to Stick. And I didn't bring it home, so the author's name didn't stick. But you can find it. It's a great study about why some ideas are stickier than others. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Hope we can meet up someday. See you later.